Welcome back, QuaranTimers. Jack from Conductive Music here. In today's tutorial we're going to be using items from your kitchen to make an epic sounding sci-fi movie soundtrack. So we're going to be making a bit of noise today, so make sure you have the permission of a responsible adult in your house before you start to collect your instruments. So let's head down to the kitchen to see what you'll need. So I'm going to need for you to find a large metal spoon, a small metal object, a slightly larger metal object, and our biggest metal object. So far in our previous tutorials we've focused on adding virtual instruments into our tracks, but today we're going to edit and record our own. And don't forget, we're only using metal objects today and nothing sharp. Okay, so it's nearly the beginning of part one. Let's start to record our rhythm tracks. So when you arrive at this first page on Soundtrap, we're going to go over to add new track. We're going to click on it and then we're going to go and click on add voice and microphones. One very important element we're going to need is the metronome, and that's the thing that's going to be keeping us in time, hopefully. So let's go and turn it on because its default is off. So if we click on, and we're also going to raise the tempo to about 133, just slightly faster than it's set at. Again, its default being 120. Next, we need to define the area we're going to be recording in. So if you come up here and you click, it turns it on, which now defines our recording area as 8 bars. When you click on the start recording button the first time, you'll see this message, and all you have to do is select whether you're using headphones or whether you're not. I'm using them, so I'm going to go ahead and click. We're going to start with our highest pitch sound, which is our smallest metal object. Next, we'll record our medium-sized metal object, and we're going to play it in two ways, one hit and one scrape. Next, we'll record our lowest sounding, biggest metal object. So let's get another track ready and get ready to record. Finally, as a bit of a surprise, grab your hardback book to make our final sound. Now we're going to be able to start looking at some of the audio production tools within Soundtrap. We're going to need to look at these waveforms in a little bit more detail, so let's go down to our magnifying glass and give it a click, just for us to be able to see these waveforms in a bit more detail. So we need to start turning this upper metallic rhythm into separate files, and we're going to use a way we've done before. So you left click to select it, then you're going to right click to bring up the menu, and you go down to split region. I'm just going to move this line across because that's where it splits it. Again, left click to select it, then right click to bring up your menu and down to split region. So I've just zoomed out so you can see what we've got after that process. So we've got all of these individual files here, and we're going to need those because what we're going to start to do is correct some of my incorrect rhythms, my slightly inaccurate timings as I was recording them in. So let's just go and zoom into that track again. When it's zoomed in like this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my mouse, I'm going to click on the start of the waveform, I'm just going to drag it until it just begins. Can you see there? Now I'm going to probably bring this back a little bit as well, just so I can still see the waveform, just leaving it there. Okay. Now I'm going to drag this back to the very first beat. So in effect what that's done is it's mean the strongest part of the beat has now aligned correctly with where it should be on the grid. If you look at the top here, what we've got is we've got 1 there, it's just been covered. We've got 1.2, 1.3, 1.4. Now this might look a bit strange at first, but all this means is that this is our first beat, dead on. Then we've got the second beat of this first bar, we've got the third beat of the first bar, and then we've got the last beat, the fourth beat of the first bar. Okay, that's all that means. So you can just ignore the first number and just read the last number if you need to do it. So this one here needs to align with the second beat. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clip the first part of that off, and I'm going to drag it back to 1.2. Let's just have a listen to this to see if it is matching with the metronome beat. So we're going to solo that. We've got the metronome on, and let's have a listen. So I'm going to go through that process now for the rest of the beats on this track and be back with you in a second. When you're checking you've got your rhythms at the right place, what would be really helpful is if you go down to here on the metronome, and there's a little settings, that little kind of cog thing. If you click on it, what you can do is actually adjust the volume of the metronome. So if you can't hear it properly, you can actually do that here. So we can just put that up. You can also change the type of sound if it's actually interfering with you being able to hear it. So actually let's just change it for now to tick. Let's check that work. There we go. Okay, let's have a listen now. We've got our metronome, which you can hear. If I take this loop off, you can hear the metronome. So now let's compare that to a track that we haven't done our manual quantize on. So I'm going to go down to our second track here and solo it, removing the first, and the metronome's going to play at the same time, and see if you can hear the difference. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through each and every one of these, and I'm going to repeat that. That's going to be quite a long process, so I'm just going to get on with that and come back to you once it's finished. So those processes have been completed now, and it probably took me about 10 minutes. So let's have a listen. So all of these files are now pretty much aligned, and they go with our metronome because we can hear, because we've put it on in the bottom. Now the next stage that we're going to need to do, we're going to need to be zoomed in a bit for. So let's just go into the file. Now each of these just ends fairly abruptly. And to make these sound even cleaner, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to actually employ this fade out. So if we click on edit, if you click on fade out, and that will have the effect of making sure the transition between here where we have our sound file and here where we have nothing is nice and smooth, and it'll just add something to the sort of sound of the track. So let's do it again for this one. I think once I've clicked it once, I don't have to do it. There we go, I can just drag it. So up to that tiny little circle on the top, if you can get it, and click and drag it across. Okay, probably about there for that one. Now this is the process I'm going to do for all of these files. Again, it's going to take me a little bit of time, so join me after I've finished that. Now I'll let you in on a secret. Some parts of audio production are a little bit boring and they do take their time, but it's like many things. The more time you spend on it, the better the end result. So before we go into a little bit more depth with the audio processing we're going to be doing here, let's start to change some of these sounds. Now, if we click and select all of the sounds here, and then we right click on one of them, we're going to go down to this lowest option here, which is change pitch. Now what this does is give us the option of going either up to an octave higher or an octave lower. Now in this case, we're going to make this upper sound higher. So we're going to go up here and click on 12. Okay, so let's have a listen to that track now. So solo on. So the book, if you remember, is going to be our lowest sound. So we're going to do a similar process here. We're going to highlight, we're going to right click, go down to change pitch, and this time 12 semitones lower. So solo on, and let's have a listen. Now that to me isn't quite low enough, so I'm going to repeat that process. The element for me which I think requires the most help really is going to be this lowest track. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this, duplicate it, and that brings us up here. Now what I'm actually going to do next is I'm going to lower this one only by another 12 semitones. So right click, down to change pitch, -12. That is going to provide a sort of sub-bass sound to this, which should help it. I'm sorry to stop you, QuaranTimers, but we've run out of time today. Thank you so much for joining me, and please join me next week when we're going to be looking at other parameters within Soundtrap to make this track sound even more industrial and scary. As ever, take care and stay safe.